There we go, and I'll welcome everyone. Thanks again for coming by and for attending that session out in the woods. It was a nice day. It worked out really, really good. So I'm going to tonight just show you some of the pictures that I took, and I'll flip into Lightroom, show you how I selected the ones that were the best ones for the focus stacking, and then flip over to Photoshop and show you how I align the images and then do the focus stacking. And I've got a couple of different examples. So I did try a couple of them, and I've got a fairly powerful machine there with 64 gigs of RAM and some high-powered processor, etc. So I got about $4,000 of computing power at my fingertips, and still some of these focus stacks efforts took as much as 20-30 minutes of processing time.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm going to speed things up a little bit tonight and just do a couple of small samples, and I won't show you all of them, but I can show you the results of what
How
what took
many
place.
how many images were you stacking to get that time?
Sometimes I stacked as many as 50.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were taking a little bit of time. So let's just flip into Lightroom here, wherever that is. Actually, I'll just go to bring up Lightroom, and that's as far as I got when I was recording my Zoom session. Not sure why, but as soon as I went to share my screen capture software just cut out. So I'm re-recording this for the people who were hoping to get a replay, and also for the people who couldn't attend the session. So again, focus stacking is all about taking multiple images at different focal points, and you can do that manually when you just shift the shift ring a little bit, take a picture, shift, 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 and so on. I happen to have a feature on my camera that does it automatically, so I can set it up and say, okay, start taking pictures now, take 35 pictures, shift it a little bit each time, and so on and so forth. So let me just double back to the field and show you what I did while I was in the field with one of my examples, and then we'll go back to Lightroom and show you what I was doing there.
Okay, I see this leaf trapped in a tree, which kind of interesting. I just set up my camera. My exposure looks about right at 200 ISO f11, 1/10 of a second. I'm going to set my menu shift focus to be on. I set it to 11 shots. Focus step, I'm going to make this focus steps a little smaller. There we go. And I'm taking 11 shots. I'm going to take a few more, make it 21 shots. There we go. 21, focus step 3. And okay, let's just, and I'm going to hit start. And it's preparing. And it's taking those shots as we go along. And you see the focus ring is actually moving as we go along here. Oh, I hear beeps. So it's now done. And so it landed here. Let's do a repeat. So that's sharp there. And as I start going through the pictures, the sharpness moves all the way to the front. And that's my previous series.
Okay, that's probably hard to see on the back of the camera, but here in Lightroom we can see the pictures that I took a little bit more clearly. And these are all the pictures of the leaves that I took, and this is some of the others that I took as we went along. So let's go back to the beginning of these leaves right here. And you'll see that this leaf is just starting to get a little bit sharper, and I'm just going forward. And you can see the leaf is getting nice and crisp, and it's getting crisp and crisp, and then all of a sudden this portion is getting a little sharper, and then it's moving. Now this portion's a little bit sharper, and now the leaf in the back is getting sharper, and now it's kind of moving off, and it's doing kind of the stuff that's in the side here. And I'm looking at it, and this portion of the leaf up here is not very sharp, and of course there's nothing else that's really sharp. So from this point forward, I'll just put this as a I'll put that as like a 2 in terms of priority. That's a 2, that's a 2. And I won't bother with these. I'll just use this one here, and even that one, maybe I don't really need it. But I could take this one, and I'll go back to group mode, and I can take that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, all the way over here, and up to here. And I can take all of those and put those into Photoshop. And so right-click, and I would say, rather than edit in Photoshop, and that would open up all of those pictures, all 18 or whatever I have there, as separate pictures in Photoshop, what you really want to do is say edit in Photoshop, and then go all the way down here and say open as layers in Photoshop. So that's going to open up Photoshop, and it's going to bring in all those images, but it's going to bring them in as individual layers all within Photoshop itself. So it'll take a while for this to do that, and we'll see how long all of this takes. And again, I'm reading raw files here, so it does take a while for all of this to get processed and get input. But it brings in the first one, and it brings in the next one, it brings in the next one, and so on and so forth. So the next step that I'll be showing you is how we take all of these images and we line them up. So as much as I was on a tripod and as much as I was trying to make sure that nothing was moving, there's always a little bit of shifting going on, whether it's the wind rustling some of your subjects or just a little bit of camera shake, the fact that the tripod was on the ground with some leaves and soft ground. It's not super firm. So you need to keep in mind that things are still subject to move, and I believe even just the act of the refocusing the lens tends to put things in a slightly different perspective. So you're going to have to line these all up before you go too far. So we're almost done here. A couple more coming in, and if things take too long, I may speed up the video at points just to save you from waiting and waiting and waiting. All right. Okay, I think we're done. Okay, so if I have just one layer identified, and I try to come over here and I say edit, and I try to say auto align layers, it can't align the layers because there's only one layer. If you take one or more layers, and I'm just scrolling down to the bottom, and I'm hitting shift and click, you can now see that all of these are identified and selected. The way you select these layers in Photoshop is you can just click on a single one and it's selected. And there we go. And if I hit Control, I get another one, get Control, get another one, get Control, get another one, so on and so forth. And I should shut off my messages. And so on. If I want to click multiple and without hitting Control click, I can hit one and then hit shift and then come down, and everything from the first one to the one I shift clicked it are together. So let's get all of them. Click on the first one, scroll all the way down to the bottom, shift click, and now I have all of them. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say edit, and I'm going to say auto align layers, and you click on that. And you can just use the auto, it'll know what to do. You could turn around and try to reposition them. But this is sort of like doing a panorama, except instead of putting pictures one next to the other and overlining them only when you need to, this is really where you would put one on top of the other just so that they line up perfectly. All right, so I'm going to hit OK. And this is going to chug away here. And it's going to align the layers based on content. And this could take a little while, so I may just pause this video and then come back to it when we are done. All right. So if you look at the thumbnail here, you see there's a little bit of white on the edges, which means it had to move this picture a little bit, or maybe you had to zoom it in a little bit. And you can see on the edges here, if I just zoom in, you can see some of the unsharp portions coming from one of the layers, which isn't necessarily on the top layer. So it's moved things around a little bit to make everything fit. But the important thing is if I unclick some of these things, you start to see that as I reveal each layer, that central leaf, which tended to be the subject, really isn't moving. It's always in the same size, same place. So I'll just enable all of these again. All right, so now that we have all the layers aligned, one on top of the other, perfectly stacked, now we can make sure everything's selected once again and say Edit, Auto Blend Layers. Here we're going to stack the images, and we're setting seamless tone and colors so that if there's any little shift in colors, let's say the sun peeked out from one of the clouds in the middle of your focus stack, then it'll try to adjust these things and make them sort of consistent. And then content aware fill transparent areas is just fixing up the edges. I tend not to do that. I tend to overshoot a little bit and just crop in a little bit, so I don't have to worry about filling that in. So I'll hit enter and let this chug away. And hopefully it won't take too long. So what it's doing is looking at each picture individually, finding the area that's sharp in each picture, and keeping that visible and masking all of the blurred stuff so that that's not visible. And it does that for each and every picture so that when it's done, it has found the sharpest portion of each and every image, and also made sure that the entire image is represented. So it's never, it never ends up with only showing you like 98% of the picture or 50% of the picture. Even if there's parts that are unsharp, it'll always find something and select it. And we're done. And now the picture is clearly nice and sharp. The tree's sharp, the leaf is sharp, the edge of the trunk here is sharp, the leaf in the back is sharp, but the background is not sharp. And if I had taken 100 more images and focus stacked all the way to 20 or 30 feet behind this tree, then those too would have been sharp. But we took a certain number of images and we made sure that our focus stack ended just a little bit behind the tree. Matter of fact, there were a few images in Lightroom we chose not to use. So let's see what it did. So if I just take a look at just this one image, it kept this portion of this image. And look at the other one, it kept very little of this one. And it kept just the edge of that one, and it kept a little bit more of that one, and a little bit more of that one. And you can see how it's progressing through the tree at areas that are further and further, deeper and deeper. And you can see each image and how much of it it kept. Sometimes it keeps very, very little of a specific image. I'll just scroll down a little bit here. And that one, and then very little of this one, almost nothing of that one, almost nothing of that one, and so on. And so you can see, if you add it all up, and I still have a few more to do. There we go. So there's our full image. So I'm going to go right to the top, and I'm going to take a snapshot of this. Control, Alt, Shift, letter E. And that creates a snapshot. So now I don't really need any of the ones underneath. I think we need to shut off my messenger somehow, but I don't know how to do that. So I can remove everything underneath. I still have just this one thing at the very top. So let me just give this a little bit more of a fall look because, whoops, it was the wrong thing. Color lookup, and I'll just say, fall. Let's take fall color look. And that's not too bad. Maybe reduce that a little bit. There we go. So we've given the thing a fall look. We could, since we do have this one layer, we could turn around and try to select all of this. This tree and all of this. And right along here somewhere. All right, I think I have, whoops, I need this portion as well. All right, I think I have a pretty good selection there. Let me just select and mask and just be sure. And yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to create a curve. I'm going to Actually, I want to darken the background, so I'm going to go to my selection and invert that. There we go. So the background's a little darker, maybe a little more. Yeah, there we go. That should be good. Okay. All right, so I have my overall image. It looks like there's a dust spot here. Let me just clean that up. All right, the rest of it looks good. Oh, I should probably crop this a little bit, get rid of some of this fuzziness stuff on the sides and on the top. This one looks pretty good. Maybe there's a little too much background, get rid of some of that. There we go. And here's the crop. Almost done. And we will just close this. Yes, we will save it. And yes, that's fine. I had done this before, so there was a previous version sitting around in Lightroom. And as soon as this is done, we'll flip back to Lightroom. And there we go. And so we now have a finished picture, a full image stacking. If we wanted to, we could take this picture, bring it into the develop module in Lightroom, make a couple of adjustments to it. I think I did that already, so I did some sharpening, bumped up the shadows, added some textures and clarity. So I had done that in previous version. So here's the kind of before and after. So a little bit extra punch there. And so here's some other examples of focus stacking that I had. So here's a bunch of a leaf, and this leaf was fluttering a little bit in the wind, so it required a lot more sort of adjustment and stacking. But this is the end result of the focus stacking exercise, and it comes out really, quite good. And that's because Photoshop did a good job of aligning that leaf. In other cases, and let me just find another example. Here's another one where I had a bunch of leaves that were rustling in the wind, and the focus stacking just didn't work at all. It just couldn't find the sharp portion of these leaves all lined up. Here's a nice little mushroom that I did that had some nice depth to it. So that was probably about 10-12 inches in depth right across the top. Some other fungus, some leaves on a tree with a little bit of bouquet in the background. Small little mushroom, might have been about 1 inch high, and it was just sitting where it looked kind of pretty in the light. And again, so a little bit of fungus on a tree trunk, and the depth from one end to the other is good 12 to 18 inches. So it would have been very hard to get this with like an f16 or something like that. You really need to get some focus stacking to be able to get images that are that kind of depth all the way along. So hopefully this helped provide a little bit of information on focus stacking. It wasn't the video that I originally had planned. I was just going to capture my Zoom session with the participants of the workshop, but since that didn't work out, I had to redo it, and in the process I ended up redoing some of the background stuff that we did in the field. So perhaps it becomes a more complete video and is helpful to a broader number of people. So thanks again, and we'll see you at some of the future workshops. Thank you.